All right. I'm excited to be interviewing Adair Reese today. She currently runs the brick and mortar boutique in Grant, Nebraska, which she opened in fall of 2020 during the thick of COVID, which I'm sure was very interesting. Back in 2019, Adair competed in the Mrs. Nebraska America pageant, of which she now serves as the pageant director. Her and I met back in middle school at a lock-in and stayed in touch throughout high school and haven't spoken in well over 20 years. And as I've seen Adair over the years, mostly via social media, there is no doubt she is someone who is motivated and gives off real positive vibes, and that energy definitely seems contagious. And so I'm really excited to hear her story today and bring her to the podcast and have her on here. So without further ado, let's welcome Adair. Adair, how are you doing?
I'm great, Jeff. How are you?
I'm good.
Excited.
Long
This is
time no
amazing.
see.
Right? Yeah. Funny story about that. So you're right. It was about 20 years ago. Um, we were supposed to go to a wedding together.
I
I
remember.
don't know. So, I was like, oh, I had to go to this cousin's wedding because when you're in your late teens, early 20s, that's what you do. And he's like, oh, I'm supposed to go on a date with a girl and I really like her. And she's pretty awesome at the time. And you're like, and I'm like, it's like you like her. Cause like we were going as friends. It was gonna be
Yep,
fun. And you were like,
exactly.
yeah. And I'm like, dude, you gotta go with her. Like, go. Well, funny story. The friend that I took to the wedding ended up now being my husband of over 20 years.
Really?
Yeah. So
Wow.
I know,
Okay.
right?
So
So
should I just
thank
say
you.
you're welcome? Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for ditching me
You're welcome. Okay.
20 years ago.
So glad I did. And I'll thank the girl that was a little jealous. And so I felt bad then and was like, okay, this would not be a good idea.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things like, yeah, I totally get it. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, that's so okay. Did you already know him very well when you invited him, or was it
Yeah,
how did
we
you meet?
actually we actually were I went to Southeast Community College in Milford. Shocking for
Yeah.
most people.
Yeah.
I went into automotive distribution and management, graduated with
No
that.
kidding.
I
Okay.
did. I know.
Wow.
Fun fact.
I didn't know that.
Um, I did. So obviously at Milford there was more guys than girls, and lo and behold, a couple people needed a roommate, and so he ended up being my roommate, a really good friend. I used to try and hook him up with all of my friends, and then my grandma at the wedding was like, "Who is that?" And I said, "Oh, he's my roommate." And she's like, "Roommate?" And
All
then
right.
yeah, we were best friends, and then yeah, still best friends, but now married for 20 years. So
Oh my gosh. Well, that's great. Well, okay. I've been carrying this weight for me on me for over 20 years that
you're
I
like,
was like
oh,
I just felt so guilty for all this time. So now I just that's a weight off
now
my
you can
shoulders.
now if it wasn't for you, I
Right.
probably wouldn't be right
Exactly.
here.
Yeah,
Crazy.
exactly. Yeah, because you never know. He might have gone on a date with someone.
Yep.
Cycle of events. You don't know how life turns out,
Right.
right?
That
Cycle of
whole
events.
butterfly effect.
The
Yeah.
whole butterfly effect. That's right. Yeah, yet I recall that. So yeah, I do remember when that happened because so I was thinking back to when we met. You know what? It's funny. Again, when I set this up, it's funny how you reminisce as you're getting ready for something like this. Again, we haven't visited in a long time, and
Right.
so I was thinking back. I was like, how did we meet? I was like at a lock-in. I'm pretty sure at the YMCA.
I
Was
think
that a
so.
church thing? Is that a
It
what?
was, yeah. I don't know why. Like
Why
they
did we do that?
lock it, you're stranded and you'll learn about God. Like,
Right.
what? Like, I mean, I remember it. And yeah, it was a lock in. It was either, yeah, it was a lock in
Yeah.
for church. And yeah,
And we met there. And, I was also just thinking, I was like, okay, so this was in the early 90s. And so we became friends. We were
yeah,
talking and this and that. And, had a good connection. But I was also thinking, yeah, we exchanged phone numbers and addresses and occasionally called each other, wrote each other,
yeah,
hung out a few times. And it's funny because you think about it, there has to be commitment for people at that point in time to actually stay
right.
engaged with each other. I mean, like now you just follow each other on Snapchat or whatever, and it's
Oh,
like
yeah.
no big deal. There's no effort.
Back then, you had to call and like the mom or dad might answer. Like, nobody, like, you didn't
Yes.
have your own phone.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it was like the dreaded, like, I'm
Yeah.
going to
Can I call long
call.
distance? Like, okay, I'll only be like
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Or you have the calling card or your mom gets on. It's like, hi, Jeff,
Right.
you have 5 more minutes. You're gonna need to get off the phone. Okay,
Yes.
mom. You're like,
I
oh,
recall. I recall. I know. Good times indeed. I know. It's wild how that's all changed and yeah. So and here we are now. And so it's been fun to see your progression. You seem like you do so much. I mean, you're
yeah.
owning a business. So that's what I was gonna be the first thing I sort of asked you
Yeah.
about is you I said when I even though we have not talked in a long time, I've been able to watch you more on social media and you do like a lot of live streams and all of this. And then you have your website that I got on the shopthebricks.com for your store that you have. And so I was reading on there how you opened your business in November of 2020. There wasn't much going on during November of 2020.
Nope. There
2020.
wasn't.
Just that we weren't allowed to talk to people without masks
You
and
right. You
6 feet
were
of social.
yeah, right. And luckily, like, so I'm located in Grant, Nebraska, which is way west.
Right,
So we'll say people out here were probably a little more lax on like
right.
the the distance. We, our kids had gone back to school. There was still some things that were a little wonky, but for the most part, people in our area were kind of like, if you'd walk around with a mask on, people would have been like, "What are you doing?" But
Right.
yeah, so things in our area had kind of gone back to normal. But yeah, definitely picked a odd time to launch a new
Right.
business that people needed to come into.
Right. Well, and even though it maybe opened then, and maybe was starting to lax in some ways, you would have been preparing for it months before that, right? It's not like
Yeah,
this happens overnight.
yeah, I started. So I was working for when kind of the whole pandemic thing hit. I was actually working for American Heart Association. I worked in nonprofit for a number of years, loved it. It was amazing. I took a job with American Heart and I was the representative for like the Jump for Heart. So when, I came in and I did the thing with the kids and I got them excited, which is totally my jam. And then they were like, and now you must stay home. And I was
Right.
like, huh? And they're like, you can't go see people. And I'm like, I'm not going to lie.
Like
Like
this is not gonna
parents
work.
plug your kids' ears. This was like hell. I was like, what?
Yeah.
We couldn't travel. There was so much we couldn't do. We had to sit on a lot of Zoom meetings, and things like that. And so it was literally like we had owned a building downtown that was a business. It needed completely regutted. And so, yeah, I think it was like March. We started just demoing inside. And I
Oh,
guess that was
really?
kind of what kept me sane through COVID
No
was
kidding.
we just remodeled it. And yeah. And I kept telling my husband, I'm like, you should let me open a boutique in here. And at first he was like, no, that's a horrible idea. And I obviously, if anybody knows me, I'm pretty bullheaded. I kind of like in my mind, I've already opened the store,
Right.
sucker. Like I'm not necessarily asking for permission. I'm just warning you, I'm probably opening a clothing store. So,
Probably gonna happen.
yeah.
So, okay, so you worked for American Heart Association. Had you been doing
Mhm.
that for a long time out there? Did you ever do the whole automotive thing of what you got your degree in? Did that happen?
I'm
The
trying.
automotion. What your
Oh,
degree was
automotive
in?
distribution.
Automotive
Yeah,
distribution.
automotive. Yeah, yep. I completed that. Graduated from Southeast Community College. Had my distribution management. I worked for the Buckle for a while. I worked for John Deere for a really short little blip and realized I don't like this.
Not a good fit.
as as so many people who graduate college realize. Um, and moved out to Fort Collins for a short period of time, not even a year. 9/11 happened, came back. And by that time, Jason and I were together. And yeah, it just kind of went from there.
All
Lived
right.
in lived in Grant, did hair for I still do. Um, did hair. And then when our kids were at an age that it just didn't work, I wanted to be as accessible to them as I could. And having appointments at night just was not where I wanted to be. And so
Yeah.
I started working in nonprofit and loved it. Absolutely. I was the administrator for a hospital foundation for a number of years. Loved it, wrote grants. I'm definitely one who I love new things and I love to like, I'm totally OCD about it. I'm
Yeah.
definitely ADHD, diagnosed at 10. So,
Yeah.
there's part of it I think that definitely, I think people would be shocked. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are. We tend
Yeah.
to be quick on our feet and like to change stuff up.
Just came out.
But
Yeah.
mhm.
So
So, yeah.
okay, so you were doing that, and here's the thing. Congratulations on opening a store. I just would imagine there was a lot of excitement, but some fear and all of that. I mean, you must have had this kind of, I mean, you had told your husband for a while. I'm gonna do this, or I should do this. You had that itch down inside. Kind of,
Yeah,
where did that come from, and how did you kind of get it to actually, make it happen?
fruition. Um, year like oh, when I was little, like my grandma worked at Casual Corner, and I used to think she had the most spectacular job. Like she would bless me and let me steam clothes. Like
Oh, really?
now I look back and I'm like, sucker. Like
Yeah, exactly.
I thought, and she would tell me what a beautiful job I was doing. But I've always really had a strong appreciation for fashion and kind of like, I would say, even like in the engineering world, the way somebody does for like the way a building is built and the way that
Hmm.
somebody constructs it, that it goes from an idea to paper to an actual product. It's all of the same in fashion. It's somebody had an idea, you see it designed, you see the textiles. I mean, everything's picked out from the buttons and the zippers. And to me, it's just such a neat industry because
Yeah,
people look at a picture and a family picture, they pick those outfits and you got to help them pick. So you get to be a little bit a piece of that memory. They probably don't realize how much that means to the store owner, but it
yeah,
does. Like when you get to see a family picture, you're like, oh, look how
I bet.
beautiful you look in something I picked or something you bought from me. And they'll have those pictures forever. And so that's
Right.
kind of the neat part. I've always liked retail. I like people a lot, even kind of the ones that aren't the nicest. It's just, and it's fun. It's fun to get to talk to women. Women are always self-conscious about what they're looking at, or, you're seeing them at their most vulnerable. What do you think? How do you like it? And I usually tell them, if you love it, get it. If you don't buy it. Like I never want
Right.
somebody to look at something in their closet and be like, ugh, that was
Right.
awful. So
So,
yeah,
okay,
it
so
just,
you open this. So obviously you're in a small town, right? I mean, there's no bones about it. Grant, Nebraska is
nope,
a small town.
nope.
So what was kind of the thought? Okay, like we're in a small town. What do you do to try to help yourself to say, okay, I'm gonna make this work here? And it's a fashionable boutique, and sometimes you don't think of that in a smaller community. How do you make it work there?
You just do. A long
Just
time ago,
do.
and I cannot remember who the speaker was. And they said, when failure is an option, that's when you'll fail. And I just made sure it didn't even cross my mind. This is gonna
Nice.
work. Why is it gonna work? Because it's gonna work. And it
Right.
was just that thing of like, I think so many times in life, people will do something that's like, yeah, I'm gonna have a plan B. I mean, I get it, but it's almost kind of that don't plan to fail. I mean, have
Right.
have different like, yeah, be ready to, I hate this word, pivot,
Right.
but just know that like, no, closing is not an option. Not doing this, not working is not an option. I might have to transition. I might have to make adjustments. That's every business. But honestly, it was just pure like, I can't decide if it was guts or stupidity.
That's
But
awesome.
it was.
Yeah. And so you do these like live stream things. So
Mhm.
in over in that part of the state, first off, this is a weird question and maybe it's a hard one to answer. Okay, so you grew up in Shelton,
Mhm.
small town, but that's more in central Nebraska. And now you're over in western Nebraska. Is there a difference in small towns between central and western Nebraska? Or is it kind of like,
Mm,
oh no, it's just another small.
yeah, I would say yes and no. For the most part, it's the same kind of, it has the same, characters. Different people play the character, kind of like when different people play in a play, like you have the town post office. I mean, like it literally is kind of
Right.
that same Hallmark based movie. Maybe, I
Yeah.
mean, there's a little more drama to hometown, but yeah, you still have the same kind of people involved. You have the same, the small high school and it's a lot of it's the same. Obviously, being out where we are, I always tell people when I'm trying to like explain where I'm at, I'm like, I am 2.5 hours from Target, and they're
Right.
like, oh, what? And I'm like, I know.
How do you survive?
I'm not sure. No.
Right.
Online shopping. And that's kind
I
of part
bet.
of where the store came in is I'm like, I would tell people, I'm like, I'm really good at shopping. There is not a thing I can't find.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, and so that's what I was gonna say. Being out there, and especially you do such a good job, I think, of you do your live stream events, and I would imagine you work to just kind of build like kind of a clientele base. Well, as far as it goes, I guess, but especially all these like kind of surrounding communities, I would imagine too. Do you kind of have connections there or anything that you kind of work on to try to help that be part of the experience?
You do. A lot of it has to do, I mean, beautiful social media, everybody knows algorithms. So when I very first started, I had joined a group called Boutique Hub. And one of the things that I did was I enrolled in this boot camp and they kind of help work you through different parts of being in a boutique. And obviously, you do want to cast a wide net, but you have to know what you're fishing for. Um,
Hmm.
so it's kind of figuring out what's your age demographic, what, gender, what are they interested in? You almost create a customer persona of, her name is Lauren, she has kids, they're in sports. And so you have a couple different people. So when you do your ads or when you do a post, you know that it's kind of reaching to those people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't carry
Absolutely.
youthful clothing. So, I mean, I post more on Facebook than I do Instagram. It pushes to both, but
Yeah.
most of my stuff is really designed for Facebook because that's where us apparently old people are.
Right.
But as my daughter's like, that's like most people are on Instagram. And I'm like, and TikTok, and I am not doing that. I
Right.
did like a
Exactly.
couple TikToks just to be like goofy. But yeah, a lot of it is just you have to be ready to transition and you have to be ready to lives are probably my easiest way is to connect. The other thing is doing the Mrs. Nebraska. When I went to nationals, I met people there. My mom used to make fun of me and say I could meet somebody in the grocery line and I was probably going to end up having coffee with them the next day, which is true.
Right.
Um, I think that's part of what I love. Like, I love to meet new people. I love hearing their story. I feel really bad because sometimes the people I know I get bored with because I'm like, yeah, I know. I know what you did yesterday. I was there. Fun
Yeah.
times. But yeah, I think it's just getting to meet people online and do the live and connect with them that way. And then you begin a relationship and they trust you. And that's kind of where you start getting your demographic. They share you with a friend. And trying to have a different niche and having things that aren't typical in a lot of our small town boutiques is kind of where I try and hit to.
Yeah. What is it like being your own boss?
Awful. I am a horrible boss.
Really? I was
You
not
know,
expecting
it's
you to say that.
it's anytime you work for yourself, it is the hardest thing you'll ever do because you are never happy with the job you're doing. The way that
Mm,
you saw it going on up in your head is so much better, or it's a lot better up here than it actually comes out. And usually you're
right.
very hypercritical of what you do. Um, it's definitely hard. And yeah, I can be a tough boss, I think, especially on myself. And it's hard to not work because I
Right.
really enjoy what I do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can work on my computer and build collections till 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, that's not
Right.
healthy. That's not good
Right.
balance. My family would like to see me, but
Right.
both my husband and I are both entrepreneurs. He has his business. He has a heating and air conditioning company, and I
Really?
have
Okay.
brick and mortar. So yeah, I know our poor kids. Like,
Right. Hey, at least they're learning the value of hard work, and if they want
I
to be an
guess
entrepreneur, they know who to turn to.
our daughter talks about being a teacher, or which is the
Okay.
main thing. I don't mean that bad at all, but like it's almost like I'm like, do you don't want to do this? Nope,
Right.
I don't
You know
think
what a
she
woman says? She's
does.
like, Mom, why would I want to do what you're doing?
I
That's
know.
just kids in
I know.
general. I don't know. I think that's
Yeah,
just kind of a natural thing a lot of the time, isn't it?
I think so. Absolutely. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, good. Yeah, no doubt. Well, that's interesting. I can definitely see being hard on yourself and always wondering, how have I done enough, right? Like,
right.
should I be doing a little bit more? I could do more, but at some point I have to like actually turn my computer off, hang out with the
Yeah.
family, relax a little bit, all the stuff.
Yeah. And that's definitely a struggle. I mean, like being ADHD, neurodivergent, however you want to say it. Um, we tend to hyper focus really, really well.
Okay.
And so once something piques our interest and something challenges us, like we're going to kill it. Like we're going to not let this go until it's perfect. And so that can definitely, I will lose track of time if I'm working on a project on my computer very easily. I can work on something for 3 hours and I didn't even realize that's how long I was sitting there.
Oh wow. Oh, real quick, neurodivergent,
Yeah.
is that kind of like ADHD? Is that different? I've
Yeah.
never heard of
So
that term actually.
neurodivergent, it's just it's the there's a I'm trying to think of his name. He is faster than normal. Um oh, I'm not gonna be able to come up with his name. He has a podcast, Faster Than Normal. It was kind
Oh,
of one
okay.
that I found when I was our son's ADHD as well as our daughter. I'm medicated. They are not. We really left that up to them. As long as they can function and are happy with their
Hmm.
productivity, we're fine with it. Um, but being neurodivergent is just the difference in your the way your brain works. So usually
Okay.
people who are ADHD lack they don't have as much dopamine. So it takes a lot more for me to feel that feel good horm or that feel good sense. A lot of
Okay.
times, undiagnosed kids will go, I mean, whether it's, what do I say? They have a really high level of addiction because,
Oh, okay.
drugs will give you that boost. I was listening to Mel Robbins' podcast actually today, and it was awesome. And it talked about that it's the way your brain metabolizes energy.
Mm,
And that's why they give kids stimulants, is because you're trying to stimulate the part of the brain that is not wanting to metabolize energy the right way. It's not doing it fast enough. Um,
mm.
so
Okay.
yeah,
All right. Interesting. Let's transition a little bit to the Mrs. Nebraska America. Would I say Mrs. Nebraska pageant or Mrs. Nebraska America pageant? Is that the full term for it?
yeah, it's yeah, Mrs. Nebraska America works great. Yeah.
Okay. So just to start, how did you get into that?
Uh, you know, I called my mom and I told her I was going to do a fitness competition, and she
Oh,
was like,
really?
maybe you should look into a pageant. And I was like, I am a grown woman.
Right.
No. But then I had actually reached out to the director, Jennifer Bradley, at the time, visited with her a little bit. I had zero idea of what I was doing. Never been in a pageant before. Really never thought I had a desire to be in a pageant.
Uh-huh.
Um, but I wanted something that was kind of just like a personal goal. I wanted to have a title I gave myself. I think kids make you a parent, husband makes you a wife, like kind of all these things that we
Hmm.
get from other people. And I was like, I want to do this and I want to win. And I did it. I competed 4 times before I actually won. The first time I think I just did it because I had no clue. Like I
Yeah.
just, um, and every time I did it, I learned so much about myself. Uh, just being able to, I mean, interview and communicate, and a little bit of that self pride of being like, it's okay to be like, yeah, I can do amazing things, and that's awesome, but so can somebody else. Like,
Yeah.
it's accepting that you can be beat at your very best, and it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
and you can think you are tip top shape, best you could ever be, and somebody will kick your butt. And you're kind of like, and you got to stand there and be like, yay for you.
Right. No doubt.
But yeah, it was awesome.
So you competed. Okay. I have to make a confession.
Oh, you're all right.
So as I was getting ready for this, I was like, oh, Adair was Mrs. Nebraska. Like I knew that. I remember you posting about it. I had seen all this
Mhm.
stuff. Last night I got so thrown off and it really threw me because I had kind of when I introduced you here at the beginning, you notice I didn't say you were Mrs. Nebraska because I was watching the old like one of the videos on there where it
Uh-huh.
showed I think did you get like runner up one year? Is
I
that
was
or
first runner up the year
first
before
runner
I
up?
won. Hmm.
Gotcha. Okay, so I saw that video, but I didn't watch like the rest of it because I know you competed 4 times, and I
Yeah.
was like, oh, she was first runner up. I'm like, That's fine," but I was like, thought I was gonna make a fool of myself
Oh,
saying, "Oh, she won Mrs. Nebraska," and then you were gonna say, "Jeff, I actually didn't win. I was first runner up," but I was under the assumption you went. So that makes me feel better. You did
yeah.
win.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That makes so much more sense now that you
Yeah.
competed a couple times, and then okay,
Yeah.
it's all coming more
It's
clear to me now.
all coming together. Yeah.
Okay, great.
So yeah.
So, are there usually okay? Seen this before with some individuals that there's sometimes like smaller pageants. Did you do smaller pageants before this also, or did you go straight for the Mrs. Nebraska?
I went straight for Mrs. Nebraska. I compete. You can, I mean, you can get assigned just a regular title for your, for the state competition. So I think I was Mrs. Western Nebraska when I competed. Um, and then you go on, once you win your state, you actually go on and we compete at nationals. So we
Okay.
competed at Las Vegas. We were gone for about 9 days. I was, competed with 50 other amazing, beautiful women. A lot of them I am still in very good contact with. Some are even directors. I actually won Mrs. Congeniality at nationals, so I was like,
Oh,
"Ha,
really?
sweet."
Congratulations.
I got called
A
and I
picture
was
of you
like,
and Sandra Bullock next to each other.
right? That somebody's like, "So are you like Sandra Bullock?" I'm like, "Yeah, pretty much." Like, I'll take
Duh.
that. She can play me in the film. Like, I'll
Right.
do that. But yeah, it was awesome. It was such a crazy, amazing experience. Like, it's so neat to see women. You hear it all the time, the whole community over competition, and it really is. I mean, we're all there. There are girls who have done amazing things, that can make you feel very much that imposter syndrome where you're like, yeah, I'm
I
glad I
bet.
like got boogers off my kid's face today. Like,
Right.
you did brain surgery, way to go.
Right. Right.
But it's really neat to see people, at the beginning of their journey, middle, and I mean, just all around. It's neat to see that. I think within women, we kind of lack that a lot. We
Yeah.
tend to be pretty self-critical and usually pretty critical of others. And so to be able to be around women that, I mean, you were competing against each other, but we all knew the worst competitor you had was the one inside.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine it is kind of a mixed bag of emotions. You're competing, everybody wants to win, right? I mean, you kind of go into there's that competitive side you would hope to, or maybe some are just doing it to do it. I guess it's maybe is dependent on the person. But the community is that are you all still good friends with
Mhm.
both with the Mrs. Nebraska contestants and then also with the America,
Yeah,
Mrs. America?
it kind of varies. Our state sisterhood, it literally is a sisterhood. I mean, there's a lot of gals got I'm trying to think, like, I think the first year was like 62, maybe was the first year for Mrs. Nebraska.
Oh wow.
Um, and so many of them are still involved. Working on kind of getting that legacy back there for a little while. It kind of lagged a little bit. It just things happen and people change. But most of us are still in contact. Some of my best friends, one gal, her name is Amanda Reiner. She is from Omaha and has a nonprofit called Ava's Army. They do a sugar plum ball every year. They raise money for pediatric cancer research, amazing things. I mean, she was the one that won my first year, and we are great friends. I mean, we live very far apart, but I mean, yeah, we do about anything for each other. So, yeah. And then the ones at the national level, absolutely. I mean, I get to see a lot of them just when we go to nationals, when we each have, our new queens competing, we'll kind of get to see each other. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's
That's
interesting.
awesome.
They say that there's a better chance of you um, being an NFL football player and competing in the Super Bowl than being one of the girls at Mrs. America. So
There you
I'm
go.
like, take
Yeah,
that, Tom Brady.
exactly. Yeah, get it narrowed down. How does a person prepare for a pageant? How do you even get ready for that? I would think I would just if
Right?
I were in that position, it just sounds a little nerve-wracking.
The hardest part, I would say the hardest part is interview. Um, just the way to connect with somebody in a matter of 5 to 7 minutes and let them know what you're passionate about, why you're passionate about it, and why you're the best person for the job.
Hmm.
On stage, I mean, you have evening gown. A lot of people, I mean, there is stage fright. You are getting up on stage in a swimsuit. That is also hard. But really, it's that emotional connection to the judges. So that way they know who you are when you get on that stage. They know the person that they're judging while you're on stage. That's probably the part that you get done and you're kind of like, I swear all I said was like, my name's Adair.
Right.
And then they talk to you and like, you did so good. And you're like,
So you were talking about so you're on the stage. You said that the interview is about 5 to 7 minutes. It's that
mhm.
long for this pageant?
5 to 7 minutes per. So you have a panel of judges in the morning. That's when interview is. And so you have 5 to 7 minutes with each judge.
Okay, so that's like kind of pre-pageant, but you're sort of
Yeah.
it's a
Yep.
part of the
That happens.
process.
Yep. Yep. You're like, for us, our score is 50% is your interview, 25% is evening gown, and 25% is swimsuit.
Wow, that's nuts. And then I want to get into some questions regarding like as you as director, but okay, but when you go to Vegas, like to me, that had to be so exciting and so nerve-wracking at the same time. I mean, because you're in Vegas, it's like, ooh, shiny Vegas. What was that like? I mean, be honest, were you like kind of scared, or was it more just kind of like, oh no, I was so excited. What was your
You're
feelings?
excited. I would say I was excited. I think how I didn't get like kidnapped as a kid is beyond me. Because I'm like, this sounds like a great idea. Like, just, I think I'm such a mindset person. Like, I why worry about it? Like, I'm not even super religious, but I'm like, this is God's journey for me. Like, and it
Yeah.
was so neat. I think it's also that it's kind of odd because while we're there, we have you're done up every day. You have hair, makeup, all the things, great
Yeah.
clothes. You're wearing your banner, and people are just like amazed by you. I mean, you're not famous, but for a moment, like people are just and I mean, their stories are so much better than mine. Like to be able to talk to them and be like, you know, yeah, sure. I wear a sash. Like, I mean, sure, I'm cool, but like it's just
Right.
it's kind of yeah, it's definitely weird. But Vegas was amazing and they treated us amazing. And we got to go up to the Elvis suite. We go to the Westgate casino in Las Vegas. And so we got to have dinner up in the where Elvis Presley stayed and
Oh. Oh, really?
lived for yeah. So that was neat. And my kids loved it. I mean, it's just it's definitely an experience that everybody gets to have. And so I was super excited to get to have it.
Yeah. And cool, you got to experience that with your family too. How awesome
Yeah.
is that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So now you're the director. So what does being the director entail? How did this all happen?
Well, it was kind of on accident. So after when I was getting ready to give up my crown, there was a passing comment from one of the co-directors of, "Are you sad?" And I'm like, I honestly made the most. I think I did before I went to Vegas. I did 52 appearances
Oh, wow.
across the state of Nebraska. Like my goal was to do as much as I could. And I did. I think Jason was ready to be done. And I said, when I give up my crown, I want to be real happy to hand it over. I didn't want to have, and so I said, I just to be around to support the next girl would be great. Like being able to help or be a director would be awesome. Didn't really think too much about it until later on. I got asked, "Hey, these other ones are stepping down. Would you like to help Sarah and be a director?" And I was really I don't even know, I'd say like an assistant. I really wasn't super involved while she was a director. And then she kind of had things going on in her life that she needed to step away. And we kind of tried to find somebody and put feelers out there, and nobody was really stepping up. And I told my husband, I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but I think I'm just gonna take it over. And I'm like,
Good for you.
his thought was like, you really need another thing to do. I was
Right,
like,
exactly.
probably not, but here we go. And
Because
so
at
I
this
did
point, would you have just opened your business? Like, is that were these two things overlapping, like new business plus taking over being the director, kind of as you
yeah,
gave up the, oh my gosh.
I know. My mom has always said I was one that thrived under a lot of stress. Like I don't do well in calm water. Like I want all of the things being thrown at me. Um, to me, it was kind of one of those things like, okay, all right, if God feels like I can handle it, I guess it's what I'm doing. And so I moved it to Kearney. It used to always be in Omaha, and then it got moved to Lincoln. And I said, well, why don't we move it to Kearney somewhere that is a little more centrally located?
Yeah, a little more accessible for everybody.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. And so right now
So
you're kind of getting ready for that. When is the competition this year?
April 27th. So yeah, kind of gearing up, working on like getting the judges. We've got a smaller class. COVID definitely hit us pretty hard. And then even just, I mean, dear God, you've got, interest rates are kind of high.
Right, no kidding.
Husbands don't really want their wives spending a bunch of extra money on dresses. But
Right.
we do have a smaller class that's competing this year. Some girls that I think will have a great time, have a lot of fun, and yeah, so it'll be
Okay,
good. I put it all,
nice.
yeah, it's all of it. And I do. I have a lot of help. Carolyn Hofert out of Lincoln. She's a real estate company out there. She's my cohort who helps me and does a lot of the stage stuff. She's amazing. And I've got Brandy, uh, why am I even Paul? She's out of Omaha.
Okay,
Um,
uh-huh.
she helps a ton. Alyssa Harrington, she's on News 4 in Hastings is one of our
Isn't
current
she the
queens, but
current, isn't she the
yeah.
current Mrs. Nebraska?
Yep.
Yes,
She's
okay.
our current. And so, yeah, we've got three queens actually. We have a Miss Nebraska for America Strong. They just have to be not married and over 18. They can have kids, they can be divorced, they can be widowed, kind of doesn't matter.
Okay.
Um, then we have Alyssa, who's our Mrs. Nebraska, as I was. And then Brandy was actually our Mrs. Nebraska American. And that's our first runner up. If they choose to, they can go compete in Vegas also.
Okay.
It's a lot. It's like a
Yeah, no,
whole, I need a mapping system for it.
yeah, no doubt. Okay. That helps. Like I said, I was looking at the website and trying to kind of understand it, and I think I was close to understanding it the way you described it. So that's
See,
good.
there you go.
Yeah. It took me a minute, but I put these pieces together. So that was great. So okay. When you have these things, okay, actually I was going to ask you, who runs your boutique when you're away? Do you have staff there, or does it close, or what do you do?
Kind of depends. So a lot of times I have an amazing mother-in-law and she steps in. They do go south for the winter, so sometimes I do have some staff I lean on a little bit that can cover it. Worst case scenario, I mean, I don't like to have to close, but every once in a while, like when I went to market, I was closed for a couple days. And most people around here, I mean, I get it out on social media, kind of let people know
Yeah.
that you're going to be closed,
Yeah.
and they're fine
Okay.
with it. But yeah,
Well, that's also why you do the orders. Like you can always send them
yep,
stuff and they can look stuff
yep.
up online and
I'll ship
oh,
it anywhere.
yeah. Dude, where's the farthest you've shipped to so far?
I've done New York, I've done California, Texas, um, where else? A lot of different states. I don't think I've done anything overseas yet, but yeah.
Okay. So you just got a couple more little things. I was noticing you kind of posted something the other day regarding business like a boot camp. Is that right?
Ah,
What's that all
my
about?
video.
Yeah.
Funny story. So, any female boutique owner, I joined the boutique hub, right when I very first started, and I go through boot camp. Well, part of it was this year they said, "Hey, would some people want to give us a little spiel about why you love boot camp and why you should do it?" And I actually have become, I probably a little, I geek out on them. I love it. It's definitely like going through a crash course, college course on being a boutique owner. Should you be an S Corp? Should you be an LLC? Are you time blocking well? I mean, it's everything. It's
Wow.
Facebook, it's Instagram. They have Jeff Finn, who actually has contacts through Facebook. So when they're changing algorithms, or I mean, there's so much more. I think a lot of times, women or business people, we tend to short sight ourselves and think like, oh, I just run this little business. No,
Right.
like we have to know analytics. We have to know, your Google platforms, all of the Google ad stuff. There's a lot that I didn't know I was going to need to learn. And so
Right.
going through boot camp, um, it saved my butt many times.
I bet. I bet you just learned so many little things like I didn't think of
And
that, and I'm
actually,
glad.
I won a computer.
Oh,
I won a
really?
MacBook Air. Yeah,
Oh,
we did
wow.
that. It was that they said, hey, we're gonna give away some stuff, and I was like, hey. I looked at my husband. I'm like, I'm gonna win you a MacBook Air, and he's kind of laughing. I'm like, watch this. And so I was absolutely super passionate about it. And I mean, most the boutique owners that I know, I've told like, you have to join this. Like, it's so yeah, there's groups for everything. Like, it's
Right.
just a great place to share and be like, I mean, we all know it. I'm sure you guys, even in like the engineering industry, when you meet another person, you're like, God, doesn't this drive you nuts? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, I just feel better knowing I'm not the only one.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Absolutely. So if someone was opening a business and you took that leap of faith, what's the advice you give to a person if they were gonna open a business?
Just do it. You will only regret the risks you didn't take. You know
All
what?
right.
Worst case scenario, close. That's it. That's as bad as go get another job. You're
Right.
fine. It's not like, you can make more money, you can't make more time. And so use the time to do the things and if you want to open a business selling marbles and you think there is a big enough demographic that's then do it. You might open up and it goes crazy, and you might open up and it just doesn't go anywhere, but at least you tried.
Right. Exactly. This is my last question, and this is kind of, I feel like I would have a hard time answering this question. So, do you have you're so motivated and you do all these things. Do you have kind of like a philosophy you live by, or like words to live by with all of these things? I mean, I'm just curious.
Oh man, like a philosophy. I'm such a manifester. I just honestly, I read The Secret, God, years ago. I mean, I'm talking probably 17 years ago. And I was always the one that if it was something I wanted bad enough, I would focus enough energy on it. Damn it, I'd get it.
Hmm.
And it was always that thing of if it didn't happen for me, it either wasn't the right time or it wasn't the right thing. And
Hmm.
you just had to be okay with it. And most of the
Yeah.
time, in hindsight, when you look back, you're like, God, I'm so glad that guy didn't go to the wedding with me. Because if you did, I wouldn't be married with this guy. I wouldn't have these kids. I wouldn't
Yeah.
have there's so
Yeah.
many things that you just have to kind of trust the process, I think. And
Right.
yeah, that whole set the goals crazy high, like crazy high.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to make $1 million. BS, you want to make $100 million. Like,
Right.
even if you're short, it's okay.
Right.
So
Exactly.
yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, my kids probably get a little annoyed. I am always have weird sayings I'll tell them, and they'll be like,
That would be what we
yeah,
should
we
do
know.
sometime is interview them and or have them just like list out all the mom sayings.
They're probably not PG.
Not suitable for a podcast.
I tend to use colorful words. Some of my main ones are like, if if you play stupid games, win stupid prizes. That's usually the one. Like if they're gonna go do something, I'm like, what's my rule? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Yep.
I like that. Okay, that's good. I'll have to use that with my kiddos too. So
Yeah. But yeah, I
absolutely.
would say it's kind of that you just gotta have faith in yourself.
Yeah. And just go
I
for it. Well,
mean,
like kind
yeah,
of when I asked you about the business, I said, what advice would you give? And you said, just do it. I mean, it's just pretty straightforward because if you don't just kind of
yeah.
jump in, it may not happen because you're gonna get nervous or something.
Overthinking it. And I granted, I mean, I can totally be once I get into something, overthink it. But if it's something that kind of keeps popping up on your mind, I mean, you think about it, like, why'd you start a podcast?
Right.
It's
No,
like,
you're right.
and it's one of those things of where, and I can't even remember where I heard it, but they're like, if you wait to do the thing that nobody's done, you'll never do anything
Hmm.
because somebody's done it. Now, they might not have done it your way, and they might not have done it. Like, you can't not do something because you're thinking, well, yeah, but so and so opened a boutique. Well, but maybe yours is better. Maybe your podcast is going to hit different with somebody else. Like, it's just, the
Right.
worst thing that's going to happen is you have to restructure, you do something different. But the sad part is if you just never did it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, that is so awesome that you took that leap and that you had that desire and followed it. I'm so glad that you did that because like I said, I see it from a distance. I obviously we haven't actually interacted
Right.
besides seeing social media postings and the live streams and it caught my attention, all the things that you do. I think everything you do seems really awesome. And as I said kind of earlier on, I really you do really seem to put this kind of real positive energy just out into the world. And I think that that's really cool. And I
Well,
would
thank you.
imagine that everyone in Grant and surrounding areas just thinks
I'm
you're
sure it's
awesome.
I'm
Well,
I'm
maybe not
sure they
everyone.
all do. I was gonna
I
say,
don't know. I
I'm
mean,
sure
you're
not
real
everyone.
fashion forward woman out in small town. I'm sure there's
Yeah.
a few women with some opinions too, but
Oh, I'm sure. And I think that's the biggest thing too, is sometimes you have to be okay with people not liking what you do and hating on it. Like I can't I obviously I need to start writing things down. Um, but I remember they were like, you're successful when you start having haters. When
right.
people start like doing things and you're like, what? Why? And then you're like, because I hit a nerve. Either I'm doing what you wanted to do, or it's an insecurity somebody else has. And I never want to make somebody feel insecure, but that's their thing. Like,
Right.
I mean, if they would, most of the time you're just kind of like, okay, you don't like me. All right, that's all right.
Right, baby, I'm giving you what I got. Like that's
I'll
all I can
smother the
do.
crap out of you until you do.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's awesome. Well, hey,
But
this
yeah,
has been so much fun. Congrats
absolutely.
on your success. Good luck and the pageant coming up that you're helping get ready for and everything like that. And I'm so glad that we got to talk and connect
Yes,
tonight.
we got to catch up. 20 years, a lot's happened.
A lot has happened. Awesome. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Adair. It's been great having you on.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.